Get ready, Padres fans. It's time for the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show on the Padres Radio Network.
Tatis at third, 2 outs. Fernando takes off. He's going to steal home without a play.
Coming up, we'll have a recap of the previous Padres game, a preview of today's starting pitching matchup, and our keys to the game. Plus, we'll hear from manager Mike Shildt. From the Padres Radio Network, here's Sam Levitt.
San Diego Padres baseball coming up on 97.3 The Fan and the Padres Radio Network. Today the Padres take on the Cleveland Guardians in the final game of a 3-game series. Our starting pitching matchup today for the Guardians, right-hander Ben Lively, and for the Padres, right-hander Michael King. Hi again everyone, Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. First pitch coming up at 10:40 a.m. for the rubber game of this 3-game set. Coming up in the next 50 minutes, you'll hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt. We also hear from today's starting pitcher, Michael King, and in just a few minutes, we catch up with Tony Gwynn Jr. But first, let's set the table, brought to you by Fraser Farms Market. Set your table with the highest quality of natural and organic products from Fraser Farms Market, a San Diego original since 1971, with 3 locations, La Mesa, Vista, and Oceanside. Padres enter today 51-50, even with last night's win. The Padres are just 2-7 in their last 9 games. Meanwhile, the Guardians have the second best record in the American League at 59-38. Guardians have lost 5 out of their last 7 games. Padres will try to do something that only one other team has done this season, and that's win a series in Cleveland. The Yankees took 2 out of 3 from the Guardians back in April at home in Cleveland. That's the only series the Guardians have lost at home this season. Guardians are 31-12 at home so far this year. Before we turn the page to today's game, let's take a look back at last night's Padres victory.
How did the Padres fare in their last game? Let's take a look back with our Padres Rewind. Presented by Hamul Casino. With thrilling slots and tables and all the best rewards, Hamul Casino has all the fun you're looking for. Hamul Casino. Fun above all else.
We had a scoreless game in the top half of the 4th inning last night, but the Padres then rallied. The bases were loaded for Luis Campusano.
A 1 pitch is lined into left field and a base hit. Merrill will score. Peralta's going to be held as the throw comes in from Juan. An RBI single Campusano, and the Padres with the first run of the night. They lead it 1-0.
Luis Arraez drew a bases-loaded walk to make it 2-0. RBI for Arraez. Jake Cronenworth was hit by a pitch with the bases loaded. That made it 3-0. RBI for Jake. From that point on, the main story became Dylan Cease. He was simply outstanding. Cease went 7 scoreless innings, gave up just 1 hit, walked 1. He ended up facing just 1 batter over the minimum, 10 strikeouts, 97 pitches. He was spectacular. Padres still led just 3-0 heading to the 8th inning. David Peralta led off.
There's the 2-2. Peralta hits it in the air to deep right field. Martinez is back at the wall, looking up, gonna go! David Peralta with his second home run as a Padre. Second hit of the night, and they add on here in the 8th inning. It's 4-0.
Padres weren't done. Ha-Sung Kim reached on an error. He went to second base on a wild pitch. Luis Campusano at the plate.
Padres have added on here in the 8th. Certainly an opportunity for more as this one is hit sharply up the middle and into center field, a base hit. Kim rounding third on his way. Freeman's throw is cut off. An RBI single for Campusano, his second of the night, and it's a 5-0 game in the 8th.
Later in the inning, Campusano was still on second base with 2 men away for Jake Cronenworth.
2-2. Cronenworth hits it in the air deep down the right field line towards the pole. This one gonna go! Second home run of the inning, and this one a 2-run shot for Cronenworth, and the Padres have busted it open 7-0.
Padres went on to win by that 7-0 final score, setting up the rubber game of this 3-game set coming up at 10:40. As always, if you want to get involved on our pregame coverage, you can do that in a number of different ways. You can tweet at me at SammyLeb, SammyLev. Instagram DMs open as well. Sammy Lev there too. Let me know, how are you getting ready to enjoy Padres baseball on this Sunday morning? Little Padres and pancakes, maybe fryers and flapjacks, baseball and bagels, coffee and curveballs, hash browns and homers. How are you enjoying Padres baseball on this Sunday? Let's go to Cleveland.
Let's go inside the Padres broadcast booth for a deep dive on today's matchup from Tony Gwynn Jr. in our Padres game preview on the Padres Radio Network.
We're joined right now by Tony Gwynn Jr. as we get ready for today's game on the Padres Radio Network. And Tony, let's start by talking about today's starting pitcher, Michael King. And I'll get a little bit more into some of the numbers a little bit later on in the show. But Michael King, you really look at his first half, Tony. There was the span where he gave up a lot of home runs, and it was shaky for him. But then around the beginning of June, he started really limiting those home runs in a major way. A lot of success has come along with that. To you, Tony, when you look at Michael King's first half, what was the difference early on to really what it's been for a couple of months now?
It sounds a lot like a guy that was really learning how to be a full-time starter for a first time. I mean, I think it's important to remember with Michael, he was kind of doing that and being in the bullpen last year. Towards the very end of the season, he started starting more often, but even then there was still kind of a cap to how long they were going to let him go. So this is really the first season that he started in that fashion. And so I think what you saw was a guy who was kind of figuring it out as he went, and when June rolled around, he started to kind of put it together a little bit, and I think that's what we've seen. On
the other side of this pitching matchup, Ben Lively for the Guardians. We'll talk more about him a little bit later on. Let's talk a little bit about this offense, Tony. 7 runs yesterday on 11 hits, and I think worth noting that Xander Bogaerts had another 2-hit game. That's now 3 games in his first 4 off the IL where he's had multiple hits. What are you seeing from Xander in the early portion of his time off the IL as of late?
I think you're starting to see, more consistent, good swings. I don't know that he's quite there yet in terms of timing, but you're starting to see that bat kind of whip through the zone the way you're used to seeing Xander kind of whip the bat through the zone. And so that's certainly a positive sign for the Padres. Any extra offense that this ball club can get, they're certainly going to take. And Xander, coming off the IL is kind of working his way back. But again, as you said, 3 multi-hit games since he's returned. That's a good sign.
I do want to talk about one guy that is struggling a little bit right now. And look, I say this with all due respect to Jurickson Profar because he's had such a wonderful season. But before the break was struggling a little bit. After the break now struggling a little bit. What are you seeing from Jurickson the last 2-3 weeks as he continues to produce, but maybe not at the level he was earlier in the year?
I think he just looks like he's starting to press a little bit. Looks like he's in hitting terms, he's a little hard. When he lands, everything is really herky-jerky right now. And I think that's more of a symptom of him struggling and him trying to pull himself out of struggling. And so, he's got to kind of try to ride this wave a little bit and just kind of figure it out. And I think he will. I think he's more equipped. This is when, one of the things he talked about that he really wanted to focus on this year was, not moving too far away from what he had done to have success just because it stops working for a little bit, not changing things up. This is when that becomes the most difficult and is hardest to do. And so when he's trying to kind of hold this little rut off, that will have to be at the forefront of his mind. And, I think he has he's equipped to be able to pull himself out of it.
Let's talk about one guy not in the lineup today, Kyle Higashioka doing the catching, day game after a night game. But Luis Campusano had the home run in the final game of the first half in a pinch hit appearance. Had a couple of RBI base hits last night, and you alluded to it late in the game last night, Tony. Campy's made an adjustment with his stance, with his pre-pitch setup. First on that, how difficult is that to do so people have an idea to make an adjustment to your stance, to your setup in the middle of a season?
Any adjustment you make in a season can be difficult, especially if it's a big one. This one, even though it's a relatively big adjustment, it's an adjustment where he's trying to trim the fat off, so to speak. He's trying to find a way to get to the hitting position quicker and have more time. And where he was starting his hands from in front, and at the beginning of the season in front of his face, basically, or right to the side of his face, that's just a long way to go when you have to get ready for upwards of 98, 99 miles per hour at times. And so I think as this season has gone along, remember he's a catcher, so there's a natural wear down that takes place, and I think maybe as you get into the second half, I think maybe he's figuring, all right, the wear down's happening. Let's try to get into a position where it's easier to get to the launch position faster and a little bit easier. So that's the adjustment he seemed to have made, and it's one of the things that's really good about when you make an adjustment and you get results right away is now it allows for you to kind of relax and believe in the process that you're going through.
All right, Tony, really good stuff. We'll see if the Padres offense can keep it rolling here today. Nice night yesterday, 7 runs on 11 hits, and Michael King on the mound for the Padres here in the rubber game of this series. We'll talk to you and Jesse coming up at 10:30 here in San Diego. Thanks so much.
No problem, Sam.
All right, that is Tony Gwynn Jr. joining us on our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show on the Padres radio network. We talked in the postgame yesterday about some of the adjustments that Campusano has seemingly made at the plate. Another guy who was not swinging the bat well before yesterday, Jackson Merrill, back in the lineup today for the Padres. Had a couple of hits in yesterday's game, so we'll see if that gets him going, and we'll see if the Padres can win this series on the road in Cleveland. A lot to do on our pregame coverage. When we come back, we revisit some of what Mike Shildt had to say after last night's win. Plus, coming up a little bit later, a lot of good stuff today from Michael King as he gets ready to make this start in Cleveland. Remember, King already at a career high in innings pitched. So we hear from Michael King on how the Padres and King are working through that and all the success that Michael has had in the last couple of months. So we hear from Michael King a little bit later. Our keys to the game, full look at today's out-of-town scoreboard, and much, much more to come. First pitch at 10:40 a.m. here in San Diego as the Padres wrap up this series in Cleveland as they continue this 9-game road trip. Our pregame coverage continues after this on the Padres Radio Network. Padres baseball coming up on 97.3 The Fan and the Padres radio network. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. We go out to Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr. in just about 35 minutes at 10:30 a.m. First pitch at 10:40 as the Padres play the rubber game of this three-game series in Cleveland. Welcome back to the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show on the Padres radio network. Your water perfected. EcoWater SoCal, your water should be perfect. Find them online at EcoWaterSoCal.com. Let's hear from the Padres skipper.
Let's pull up a seat in the manager's office and hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt. Presented by Sinley Food. Spice up your culinary life.
Day game after a night game, so no pregame media availability for Mike Shildt today, but certainly a lot of good stuff to talk about after last night's 7-0 win. Dylan Cease was absolutely brilliant. 7 shutout innings, 1 hit given up, 10 strikeouts. He faced 1 over the minimum. Offensively, Padres scored 3 runs in the top of the 4th inning, found a way to cash in when they had some opportunities against Guardians right-hander Gavin Williams. 2 RBI hits for Luis Campusano, late home run from David Peralta and Jake Cronenworth, and all in all, a very nice and tidy 7-0 win for the Padres. Mike Shildt, what did you think of Dylan Cease last night?
I thought he was great. Can't ask for much more. I mean, pretty much dominant. Back-to-back outings tonight, just in complete control. Fastball, serious life to it. Secondary pitch is amazing. Took a little off the slider a little bit tonight, which was effective as well. I thought he was tremendous, A++.
For him to do what he's done the last 2 times out against the lineups that he's done it against, what does that say about the pitcher that he is?
It says he's pretty dominant, top of the rotation kind of guy that can help you, when you get to the playoffs.
Your offense, a couple innings that we haven't seen very much of lately. I know you've seen it a lot this year, but not lately.
We have seen it a lot. We haven't seen it much lately. Again, similar to last night, a lot of really good at-bats. Taxes started, but tonight we were able to cash in. Just scratch and call it early and then some big blows later to help us a little bit of everything. But guys in the whole field, a lot of contributors. Campy was good. Crony with the big swing. Peralta continues to have good at-bats. Let's don't overlook Bogey. This guy's taking some really good at-bats. He's really in a good place, and it's nice to have him back in that lineup.
I know that you guys have had a lot of contributors in various games, but especially right now, you have one big guy who's out who could make a difference in a lot of situations. A night like tonight with Peralta and the guys that you mentioned, how much do you need that?
You talking about
different contributors? With
we need it. Yeah, we need it. We had it with Toddy. He clearly is a big part of it. We miss him. But that's the way we're really built and how we approach our identity of our offense is being able to do things across the board, 1 through 9, handle the situation, play the game, do what the game calls for. And guys really took good at-bats, got rewarded tonight, and it was just a good team approach. It was a well-played baseball game all the way around.
That was Padres manager Mike Shildt last night after the Padres 7-0 win against the Cleveland Guardians. We'll hear more from Mike on our post-game show later on this afternoon. Well, one thing going on in baseball today, the Hall of Fame inductions in Cooperstown. Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, Joe Mauer, and Jim Leland all inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame today. As for Mauer and Helton, they enter Cooperstown after playing their full careers with just one franchise. That's a pretty rare feat in baseball these days. And among the active leaders in games played for a single franchise is Jose Ramirez in today's game for the Guardians. He's now played in nearly 1,400 games with Cleveland. A little bit higher on that list, Joey Votto with Cincinnati, Jose Altuve with the Astros, Charlie Blackmon with Colorado, Mike Trout with the Angels, Salvador Perez with the Royals, then Jose Ramirez with Cleveland. Right behind Ramirez is Alex Bregman with the Astros. So look, we know in today's day and age, it's pretty rare that a player spends his whole career with one team, but certainly Mauer and Helton in that category. And again, they go into the Hall of Fame alongside Adrian Beltre and Jim Leland. Really good Hall of Fame class in 2024. First pitch coming up at 10:40 in Cleveland. Let's tell you who's hot, who's not.
Which player is locked in at the dish? Who needs to kick things up another notch? This is Who's Hot, Who's Not on the Padres Radio Network.
We begin with a look at the hot category, and nobody is really scorching hot for the Padres right now. Remember, the offense before last night had really been struggling, but David Peralta continues to swing the bat well. Peralta hitting .324 in his last 11 starts, 2 doubles and 2 home runs in that span. Peralta back in the lineup today for the Friars, batting 7th and playing right field. In the not category, we take a look at 2 important Padres. Manny Machado 0 for 5 last night. He's batting just .161 in his past 8 games. Jurickson Profar, we mentioned him in the opening segment with Tony, 3 for 29 in his last 7 games with no extra base hits in that span. And that's a look at who's hot, who's not, as we get ready for the finale of this 3-game set. When we come back, we hear from today's starting pitcher, Michael King, plus coming up a little bit later, a look at the out-of-town scoreboard, our keys to the game, a full breakdown of this pitching matchup between King and Ben Lively. First pitch coming up at 10:40 on the Padres Radio Network. Our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show continues here on the Padres Radio Network. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios as we get ready for first pitch coming up at 10:40. Rubber game of this 3-game set between the Padres and the Cleveland Guardians. We go out to Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr. in just about 25 minutes. They'll have the full starting lineups, first pitch, and then all the play-by-play. San Diego County Toyota dealers are proud partners of the Padres and supporters of the San Diego community, and we would like to especially recognize and honor the men and women who serve our country on this Military Sunday. Thank you, and go Padres. Padres taking on the Guardians here today. Like we always say, a little morning action here on the West Coast. We say Padres and pancakes, Friars and flapjacks. I said baseball and bagels earlier. What did I say? Hash browns and homers. We have Brian on Twitter saying locks and long balls. I like that. Locks and long balls. That's a good one, too. All right, let's update you on the injuries for the Padres entering today.
Who's in? Who's out? This is the Bada Fulkerson Injury Report, presented by San Diego's Bulldog Injury Attorneys, who hope you're never in an accident. But if you are, make Bada Fulkerson the first call you make. Hit them up 24/7 at badafulkerson.com.
Well, thankfully, on the Padres side of things, really nothing new to report as of today. Like you probably know by now, Wandy Peralta, the most recent player to be put on the 15-day IL right before the All-Star break with a left adductor strain. We do have positive updates this week on Joe Musgrove and Fernando Tatis Jr. Musgrove has thrown a couple of bullpens this week. All has gone well, according to Joe and the Padres. And Fernando Tatis Jr., we know he underwent an MRI earlier this week. The results were encouraging. He has resumed some baseball activities. So we continue to get good updates on Joe and Fernando. Peralta on the IL right now in the Padres bullpen. There was an interesting note, not major league roster related, but something that could affect the major league roster here pretty soon. And that was a report today from Kevin Acee in the San Diego Union-Tribune. Remember, Johnny Brito was sent down to AAA to get stretched out and work on a splitter. The Padres don't need a fifth starter until next Saturday because of the off days and the All-Star break. Certainly, you would imagine Brito would be a potential option to make that start, but Kevin Acee in the San Diego Union-Tribune reporting today that Brito did not make his scheduled start for AAA El Paso a couple of nights ago due to discomfort in his forearm. So Kevin writing his availability will be somewhat dependent on his health. So we'll see what the deal is with Brito ultimately, and also what the Padres potentially do next weekend in Baltimore when they would presumably, for the first time in the second half, need a fifth starter. So keep an eye on that. Not a great update there on Johnny Brito. We'll see what the Padres have to say about Brito in the coming days. Let's take a full look at the out-of-town scoreboard.
Let's take a trip around the Bigs and tell you about the scores you need to know in our out-of-town scoreboard. Presented by Jensen Meat, where great taste meets integrity.
We take a full look at the out-of-town scoreboard. We have no games going on right now. We did have one game already scheduled to be underway, but they are in a rain delay in Minnesota before first pitch between the Brewers and the Twins. Everything else is coming up in a little while. Reds and the Nationals at 10:35 in D.C. Phillies and the Pirates today in Pittsburgh at 10:35. Cardinals and the Braves in Atlanta at 10:35. Rays and the Yankees in the Bronx at 10:35. Tigers and the Blue Jays also at 10:35 a.m. in Toronto. Mets and the Marlins in Miami at 10:40. White Sox and the Royals at 11:10 in Kansas City. Seth Lugo on the mound for Kansas City. He's been great this year. Drew Thorpe, former Padre prospect, albeit very briefly during the offseason, on the mound today for the White Sox. Diamondbacks and the Cubs in Chicago at 11:20. Shota Imanaga on the mound for the Cubs. Orioles and the Rangers in Arlington at 11:35. Giants and the Rockies in Colorado at 12:10. Angels and the A's in Oakland at 1:07. Astros and the Mariners in Seattle at 1:10. And finally, Sunday Night Baseball at 4 p.m. in L.A. The Dodgers play host to the Boston Red Sox. And that is a full look at the out-of-town scoreboard. We'll have much more on all those games coming up a little bit later on during our post-game show. Well, Michael King, and we'll get more into his numbers during our keys to the game and during our pitching preview a little bit later, but he has been really, really good in the last couple of months. He comes into today's game a 3.41 ERA in 20 outings, 19 starts, and you look at his innings total already at 111. Remember, Michael King, his innings high was last year before this season at a little bit more than 104 innings last year with the Yankees. So here in late July, Michael King is already at a new career high in innings, and it's something we've heard from Michael about throughout the course of the year, even going back to spring training, about the innings number and how the Padres would manage that. Here was Michael King inside the Padres clubhouse yesterday talking about how he and the Padres are working through his career high in innings and then much more.
I've talked to Ruben a bunch throughout the year, and it's not like we're saying, oh, if he gets to X innings, we're going to shut him down. It's more of like a feel thing. I know he's done it, especially recently with Seth Lugo, and it's a constant communication. I feel like I have put my body in the right way to be able to have a full season, but I know that they're trying to, I don't want to say chisel off innings, but kind of give me a break if I could. I think of the Boston series when I think we were up 9 runs, and I felt like I could have gone back out there for the next inning, but it's like, hey, we can limit an inning here. And then it's really just managing it throughout the rest of the year, and knock on wood, my body's been feeling great. So I continue to communicate that with the staff, and we go from there.
Are you doing anything different to your routine than you've done in years past to kind of build yourself to a point where you can make this type of deep push?
I think it's obviously a totally different routine from reliever to starter. When I was a starter, it's a similar routine, but I think that the lifting aspect of it has been huge for me, just to make sure that I'm staying strong throughout the year. And I get those 4, sometimes 5 days off in between starts where I can, what I'll say is, break down my body to make sure it's strong for that fifth or sixth day. And then it's staying in the training room, making sure that my soft tissue's up to date, that I'm doing a lot of shoulder care, making sure my arm's strong. So it's nothing that I haven't done in the past, but like you said, I haven't done it in a few years.
Physical is one aspect of it, but there's a mental grind. It's certainly a component to being a big league starter through the duration of the season. Have you noticed any changes in your mental approach or outlook moving forward? Are you doing anything in the way of, say, mental training or so to stay on top of it?
No, not really. I actually think, and I'll probably get some hate for this, I think it's easier mentally as a starter than it is as a reliever, because as a starter, if I'm getting a full season, it's 32 games I got to be locked in for. As a reliever, you're hot every day. So I remember going into the season as a reliever being like, wow, this season's getting long, because I'm dialed in, and even though I'm not pitching, I still have to stay locked in for those games. So it's really nice to be able to kind of kick back, kick my feet up, and watch Dylan Cease go carve. And then I just got to lock in on that 5th day. So I really think that the in-between is more of just learning what I can learn from our other starters, or learning what the other team's approach is going to be.
With a couple of guys down still, hopefully we get a few back, are there any additional concerns as your team is hovering around 500? Every game is of critical importance. You do have some built-in off days. Is there any added layer with that component, pressure or otherwise?
No. I always say that the talent and the chemistry is going to take over. Once you get to this part of the season, it's now that time where it's the teams separate themselves if they're built to separate themselves. So I think this is when you'll really see the elite talent show, and I know we have a ton of that in this locker room, and I'm very excited for the next 62 games that we got left.
Just made reference about the work plan you had to start the season. Is it safe to say that it's gone according to plan, or has been maybe adjustments along the way in terms of these first months?
Yeah, I think it's gone according to my plan, I would say. I have no idea what the team expected of me, but I feel very strong. I know I'm over the career innings that I've had in the big leagues, that is, but I feel like I'm continuing to build, and I've seen my velocity continue to kind of uptick, or at least stay the same. And yeah, I come back every day doing my prehab stuff and almost question why I'm doing it, because I feel good going into it. But I know that's something that I don't take for granted, and I'm going to make sure that I continue to stay strong through October.
Preseason, Mike Shildt said you had your repertoire, you have your arsenal, your pitches you manage. Is there anything that Ruben Niebla has been working with you, worked with you to tweak this, there, sort of like be a little bit more precise in the pitches? Yeah,
well, I think what Ruben's so good at is understanding me and all of our other pitchers and how we communicate. So the main thing for me is I don't like to think mechanical when I'm out there. Obviously, there are mechanical tweaks that I can make to make myself a better pitcher, but he has found ways to give me cues that don't make me think mechanical, but get me into those mechanical positions. Momentum is one of them, or getting stuck over the rubber is one of them. And instead of me having to think of like, get to this position, it's more of like, okay, gain some momentum and get down the mountain. I'm a rhythm pitcher. I need to feel that rhythm in my delivery. And so I think those are the things that have helped me be more consistent throughout the year instead of getting into those cold streaks and making those cold streaks longer than I want them to be.
That is today's starting pitcher, Michael King, speaking inside the clubhouse yesterday. As always, a lot of good stuff there from Michael on that innings number and much, much more. We'll see how Michael King does against a good Guardians lineup, albeit a Guardians lineup that has not been nearly as good as of late. Let's talk a little bit more about that with our keys to today's game.
How will the Padres unlock a victory in today's game? These are the keys to the game. Presented by Honor Buick GMC Hummer in National City.
Key number 1, Michael King continuing to limit the home run ball. At the end of May, Michael King had allowed 13 home runs in just 66 innings of work, the most home runs allowed in the National League. We know that was a problem for King in the early part of this season, but in June, he really started to turn that whole home run problem all the way around. He was just one of 5 major leaguers to allow 1 home run or fewer across at least 30 innings starting in June. Since June 1st, King is the only pitcher in baseball to allow just 1 home run across at least 45 innings of work. So again, he had given up a ton of home runs early on, but since the start of June, he's been among the best pitchers in baseball at limiting the home run. That's key number 1, Michael King continuing to limit the long ball. Key number 2, Michael King and the Padres bullpen keeping this Guardians offense down. They've been a great team this year, 59-38, but they've scored only 25 runs in their last 9 games. The Guardians have been shut out 4 times in the span of those 9 games, and the Guardians are hitting just 129 in the 6 losses in that span. 5 runs in those 6 losses combined, 1 for 19 with runners in scoring position in those 6 losses. So when the Guardians aren't winning as of late, that means they just aren't hitting. Can the Padres, can Michael King keep this Guardians offense down? That's key number 2. And key number 3, couple of guys in this Padres lineup that have done really, really good things on the road this season, continuing to do them. Luis Arraez, productive day on Friday, had a couple of walks yesterday, played at a run with one of those walks yesterday. Arraez leads the major leagues coming into today with a .380 batting average on the road this season. That includes a .397 average on the road in 31 games with the Padres. Key for the Padres today, Luis Arraez getting it going, continuing to produce at the top of the lineup. Jackson Merrill really struggling entering yesterday's game, but had 2 hits yesterday. He's hitting .342 with 3 home runs and 7 RBIs in his last 9 games on the road. So I bring up those 2 guys to say this. Arraez and Merrill both have been very, very good on the road this season. Both have had pretty nice series to this point. Merrill struck out 4 times on Friday, but he bounced back with 2 hits yesterday, impactful in yesterday's game. Can Arraez and Merrill help lead this offense today on the road, a place where they've been very good for the most part this season? And that's a look at our keys to today's game. When we come back on our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show, we'll talk a little bit more about the Padres offense. Plus, we dive even deeper into today's pitching matchup between Michael King and Ben Lively. Final and rubber game of this 3-game set coming up at 10:40 in Cleveland. Our pregame coverage continues after this. Our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show continues here on the Padres Radio Network. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. First pitch coming up at 10:40 in Cleveland, Ohio. For the rubber match of this three-game set, we go out to Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr. in just a little under 8 minutes. They'll have the full starting lineups, first pitch, and all the play-by-play. I walked in the building this morning. I saw our studio coordinator, Frank Marchese, and I said to Frank, I have no idea what to talk about for our What to Watch For segment here today. And Frank looked at me and he said, Sam, I know what you got to talk about. Let's find out what Frank decided we should talk about for our What to Watch For segment.
What's the one thing Sam Levitt will be keeping his eye on in today's game? This is What to Watch For, presented by Genesis Home Improvements, San Diego's trusted painting, roofing, and window company. Save 15% today on a new beginning for your home. Visit GenesisHomeImprovementsSD.com.
A good pick here by Frank. Frank said to me, you got to talk about the offense. What offense is going to show up today? And I said, Frank, you're right. Good point. Here's why. The Padres made a little history yesterday. They were shut out by 7 or more runs in a game on Friday, then proceeded yesterday to shut out the opponent by 7 or more runs in the very next game. It's never been done in Padres history. So here's the question today. Do we see the Padres offense we saw on Friday night where they got shut out on 4 hits? Or do we see the Padres offense that we saw last night where they scored 7 runs on 11 hits and hit a couple of late home runs and cashed in a few times with runners in scoring position? What offense shows up today? That's what to watch for in this series finale in Cleveland. Good job by Frank. It was eluding me, evading me. What do I talk about for what to watch for? And Frank comes to the rescue. Let's dive into this pitching matchup between Michael King and Ben Lively.
Let's take a look at who's on the bump today with our starting pitching preview. Presented by Chimney Sweeps, Inc., San Diego's trusted chimney and fireplace service company for 40 years. Call Chimney Sweeps, Inc. at 1-800-CHIMNEY or book an inspection online at chimneysweepsinc.com.
On the mound for the Padres here today, right-hander Michael King. The 29-year-old is 7-6, a 3.41 ERA in 20 outings so far this year. 111 innings of work. He struck out 129 and walked 42. Last start before the All-Star break against the Mariners, 6 innings, 1 earned run given up, 3 hits. He struck out 9. His last 3 starts before the break, really, really good. A 1.56 ERA in 17-plus innings. 5 career relief appearances against the Guardians, really good with the Yankees. 10-plus innings, no runs allowed, 3 hits. So in his career against Cleveland, he has been terrific. We got into his lack of home runs allowed earlier and the improvement in that department, but a couple of other interesting notes on King. Opposing hitters are batting just 169 with runners in scoring position against King. That's tied for the 7th lowest opponent batting average with runners in scoring position in the major league. So when he gets in trouble, very often he's able to find a way out of it. The arsenal for King, the sinker, the 4-seam, changeup, sweeper, and a slider. As we know for King, his whiff rate with the changeup ranks really high, 35% on the year, a little bit above 35%, in fact. That ranks 7th in the major leagues. We'll see how Michael King does today against what has been, for the most part this season, despite some recent struggles, a very good Cleveland offense. Meanwhile, on the mound for the Guardians, right-hander Ben Lively. The 32-year-old is 8-5, a 3.58 ERA in 16 starts, 88 innings of work. He struck out 78 and walked 25. Last start before the All-Star break against the Rays, he went 5 innings and a third, 2 earned runs given up, allowed 3 hits. He has reverse splits this season. The right-hander much better against lefties than righties. Lefties batting 197 against him with a 628 OPS. Righties at 272 with an 817 OPS. So righties have hit him much better than lefties this season. Lively has never faced the Padres in his career. The arsenal for Lively is sinker, 4-seam fastball, sweeper, changeup, curveball, and a slider. And even though he's never faced the Padres before, A couple of guys have seen him a little bit and have had some good success against him. Xander Bogaerts, a couple of hits against him in 3 at-bats with a couple of doubles. David Peralta, a couple of hits against him in 5 at-bats. So we'll see how Bogaerts and Peralta do against Lively here today. And that's a look at our starting pitching matchup between Michael King and Ben Lively. You've been listening to the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show on the Padres Radio Network. EcoWater SoCal, your water should be perfect. Find them online at EcoWaterSoCal.com. Padres trying to hand the Cleveland Guardians just their second series loss at home this year. We'll see if they can do it here today. Rubber match of this 3-game series coming up. When we come back, Jesse Agler, Tony Gwynn Jr. have the starting lineups, first pitch, and all the play-by-play. I'll talk to you on our post-game show. You're listening to your home for San Diego Padres baseball, 97.3 The Fan, and the Padres Radio Network.